Across several different platforms, I've seen a lot of debate around who is stronger between the old gen like Goldie Roger and Whitebeard and the current top tiers of the present day, consisting of the likes of the 4 Emperors and several admirals we've seen since Marineford. This gap between both eras is pretty controversial amongst the fandom and is even something we're teased about in the manga. And a very notable warrior from the generation of Roger and Whitebeard is Kozuki Oden. And luckily for us, we have seen a battle on screen between one of the top warriors of the present day, Kaido, and Kozuki Oden. Their battle is easily one of the most misunderstood fights in the series, and I think that it's pretty important that we all understand how this fight actually went and not this delusion that this fight can lead to the wrong viewpoint. The reason why I need to talk to you about this just so badly is because people really like to ignore how much smaller the gap is between these characters, as the truth just isn't what they want to hear. And this is a fight that seriously can affect your own view of the power gap between those in the past and those in the present day. So for this video, I'm going to go over this whole fight to show you that this fight was not just some one-sided stomp on Oden's part. I also want to point out that I will be debunking some misconceptions that take place before their fight actually starts, so you can understand the point that I really am getting at. As always, if you'd enjoy more One Piece content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to help support the channel, because YouTube tells me that 99% of you who watch my videos for some reason just aren't subscribed. So before we start, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you stay up to date on future content. For this video, there will be timestamps in the description of this video along with chapters on screen, so if you'd like to skip around between parts, feel free to do so, although I highly recommend you don't, as it is all important and can build up later on. To start off, I want to clarify that for the most part, I don't plan to address the full adaptation of this fight in the anime, as Oda himself does not work on this, as his whole work is around the manga. But the anime does showcase this fight pretty interestingly too, so I will go over a bit of that when necessary. Now, before we go into this fight, there is this one statement that everyone just takes so out of context, so I want to address it all first. Many of you may already be familiar with this statement, as it states how Oden returned back to Wano after his time spent at sea, where he is said to be multiple times stronger than the version of himself who left the country with Whitebeard. The reason why this is so important to address is because this same Oden allegedly clashed with Whitebeard, as this was when Whitebeard first came to visit Wano, which people bring up all the time to try and upscale him somewhere way higher than where he actually scales. Now, when I mean he allegedly clashed with Whitebeard, that's kind of just a bit of glaze, but we all just need to acknowledge that this still is a very casual interaction with Whitebeard, where neither are using any advanced haki, if Oden had any at that time, which if you want to say that he had advanced armament, like, that's fine, but we know that at the very least he shouldn't have advanced conquerors, and Whitebeard on screen at least is not using his devil fruit powers. But also, Oden is the one who is charging at Whitebeard, who just casually swings his weapon specifically to block Oden's attack. Plus, keep in mind, at least 2 years passed since Oden left Wano and when Oden and the Whitebeard pirates fought the Roger pirates, where we literally see Roger completely outclass Oden with divine departure. And also right afterwards, when he sees Roger and Whitebeard clash, you can very well see his reaction and how he very clearly feels inferior to them after watching a battle of two legends among men. So for Oden to be anywhere near this level, at least at the present time of what span of events we're talking about, it makes zero sense. But now we see how Oden has returned to Wano many times stronger than when he first left, brings us to the time for Oden and Kaido to fight. Before Kaido and Oden fight in the main battle that we all know about, when Oden has first returned to Wano, we see that Oden and base Kaido actually have a clash with each other. Now, I know that it was a very quick interaction that probably did not lead into a full-on battle, as we know this interaction was when Oden and Kaido made some sort of deal with Orochi that led to Oden dancing in the streets of Wano to protect the people of the country. But this clash is still very telling of how this battle turns out, and from from here, 5 years have passed of Oden dancing in the streets of Wano, and just to clarify, there is nothing that suggests that he was training in this time. At best, you can maybe say that the Scabbards was training during this time, but as Oden being the one who is carrying this heavy burden on his shoulders, there still just is nothing. All I'm saying is that based on what we have, there is nothing that suggests that Oden got stronger in these years. So any conclusions you want to make, that's all on you. And you can definitely make the case that Oden wasn't even mentally capable of making himself stronger, or maybe you can say how what he went through these past 5 years and how he was feeling at the end while it was the time to go after Kaido, but there isn't anything concrete to go off of for either stance. But in these 5 years, Kaido has things like expanding his army and a documented fight against Moria and his crew, which takes place during the second year after Oden returned back to Wano. Obviously, the Moria that we see throughout pre-time skip is considered pretty weak. I know he is considered in his prime during the time he goes up against Kaido, so we can go over this more, as this conflict is for sure implied to have been a war, and Moria's clout as a warlord I believe stems from this conflict. But the point that I'm getting at though is that if anyone is remaining active in their training and even real battle, there is more to suggest that this is the case for Kaido and not Oden. Now, to finally start off with this battle, I want to do things a little differently than how this video has gone so far and give some credit towards Oden, as during the fight we see how he had to cut through all of Kaido's soldiers, as Oden and his team were massively outnumbered, even if majority of them were just not notable fighters aside for King and Queen. I mean, to be honest too, we do still see damage on Oden's face from these guys still, although it looks like it's nothing serious at all. And still, even if you are a great warrior like Oden, in battle where the odds are massively against you, you obviously can't come out unhurt at all. Also, we see in this battle, King and Queen both take on several of the Scabbards each, as they each take on at the very least 2 of them. Now that we actually get into Oden and Kaido finally facing off against each other, this is where I think the dialogue of this fight actually gets very odd, as the first thing we see is Kaido in his dragon form, and he lands his attack on Oden, which sends him flying, and then now getting additional damage that now gets from this attack. So he was taking damage from Kaido and was even slow to just get up from when he was taken down, and he even had to use his own sword to help stand himself up. We then see Oden charge in and land his attack on Kaido that is famously known to scar him. But after that, let's take a look at the next panel of the Beast Pirates expressing their reaction. They say, "He landed a blow on the invincible Kaido," which just very clearly implies that beforehand, Oden had yet to hit Kaido. And just to add on, they also refer to Kaido as invincible, just like how Oden is in that first panel we went over at the start of the video. And this is what I mean by the dialogue being pretty weird in this fight, along with how in the previous panel, it states how the battle between them lasted longer than planned and how Oden was stronger than what Kaido thought. This all leads me to view how this fight went, as Kaido came into this fight not believing that Oden is someone who is capable of fighting him. And then Oden comes out of nowhere with the ability to hit him, which he could not do previously. And then that's how he surpassed Kaido's imagination on what Oden can do, going from someone incapable of fighting him to someone who clearly can. And this is backed up by Oden now being recognized as one of the only few capable of fighting Kaido, and at this point in time of this fight, it was only Roger, Whitebeard, and Rocks who had this kind of recognition. And Kaido does talk about how Oden's best chance at defeating him would have been when they first met during their first clash, as Kaido had a weaker army and Oden could have had a way stronger and larger one, and also Kaido didn't know how strong Oden was then, which he notes. And this is backed up by Kaido's next statement, where he talks about how at that point Oden still had a crazy reputation that he could have lived up to, but after clashing, Kaido clearly doesn't think he did. Another point I want to bring up is on the bottom of this panel, after Oden hits Kaido, we see Kaido drop to the ground, and people think that Kaido was done and that Oden was going to actually kill Kaido right before when their fight was interrupted. But we literally see Oden say to Kaido to never return to Wano. Whether you see this as Oden is saying how he is banishing Kaido from the country or sending him to hell, all up to you. Either way though, I just don't think that based on him getting knocked down, we can just say he was not going to get back up, as we see this happen throughout all of Wano. We see this during Luffy's first fight against Kaido, the Scabbards fight against Kaido, Luffy fighting Kaido again on the rooftop along with the other supernova, which led to him literally being knocked unconscious, and even when Luffy fights Kaido while in Gear 5. Every single one of these fights, we see the same thing after he gets knocked down, and he gets back up every single time. Back at the start of the video, I did say how I wasn't going to bring up the anime's take on this entirely, but there is one specific part I want to bring up. For those of you who don't follow the anime and how they adapt things, in this adaptation of the fight, we see after Kaido gets hit, he gets back up in base, and he and Oden run at each other to clash where they get interrupted. In the manga, this is pretty different, and I think that it's really weird as we don't see this, and the small panel on the bottom shows Kaido still on the ground in his dragon form. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because Oden and Luffy are meant to parallel each other as both fighters who gain the acknowledgement as people who are capable of actually fighting with Kaido, and then the fight gets interrupted, preventing Kaido from properly winning. In this panel, Kaido is literally seeing the same scenario when he was against Oden flash before his eyes with Luffy. When you look at how this panel is formatted, we see how upset Kaido is for his fight with Oden being interfered with, and because of this, he kills the person who does. And following up when Oden actually dies, we come to see Kaido actually apologizing to Oden for how their fight ended. We also see Kaido thanking Luffy later on for surviving, and also again apologizing to Luffy for how their fight ended, as he does not want to win in such fashion. The thing as well is when Oden gets distracted, Kaido immediately ends up hitting Oden and takes him out in base. And what just doesn't make sense to me is that if Kaido were to be mad at the old hag for interrupting their fight, why would Kaido right away run up to Oden and then take him out while he sees he's already distracted? Especially when he can just wait it out or stop the fight from being messed with. To me, it just makes way more sense, and I mean way more sense, for it to have been a situation where Kaido got back up from being hit by Oden, reverted back into his base form where he charged at him as Oden does to him, and when he is instinctively running up to meet Oden in the middle for them to clash, Oden gets caught by surprise by what's around him, forcing him to turn off his guard. And while Kaido is just moving so fast in the moment when Oden had turned around, he was unable to stop himself from hitting Oden mid-swing. And keep in mind, in this time period, Oden is meant to turn his head at the last second very briefly where he is caught by surprise, and then right away, Kaido hits him as his attack is right there waiting. Also, look at Kaido's face after he hits Oden. He is very clearly in the heat of battle where it's like Oden's getting back into the fight, and then right away, he gets hit because Kaido was coming in with his own swing. This all happens in a split second, as there just isn't any time for Kaido to be unconscious, wake up, and run over to Oden to land a sneak attack on him while he's off guard. And what I think makes this worse is that this is completely out of character for Kaido, as he is seeing his experience with Oden the same as what happened with Luffy. If anything, this can be shown as his PTSD from being robbed of a proper win in such a true battle. I think that it would cause a lot of problems, as it would prevent him from being as confident as he is over his own capabilities, which would be inconsistent to Kaido's character, and it would diminish his character and his own point of view going forward in future fights. And we never get any of this self-doubt from him. If anything, it's the opposite, as he truly feels he is the strongest in the world and no one can beat him besides for the Joy Boy.